Hello, greetings from Hyderabad. Today's event focuses on building smarter marketplace applications in Sitecore with Agentic AI, presented by Subramanian Ramanathan, hosted by Vishal and Mani. Over to you, Subbu.
Yeah, thanks, Yamini, and thanks, Vishal, for having me here. And I think this is the second time I'm presenting in the user group and really excited to be here. So we'll be discussing about how you could build an agentic AI application within the Sitecore based on the Sitecore Marketplace SDK app, which has been recently released by Sitecore, I think about like 3, 4 months ago. Yeah, I'm Subbu. I lead the AI practice here at Altido and been with Altido for about 6 years. I work from Halifax in Canada. I'm a four-time Sitecore MVP, and I've been presenting in these kind of user groups, and I also write blogs and create modules. And I'll be showing one of the module that I've developed as well in this call today. So for today's call, we'll be first starting with what is the Marketplace SDK, a quick overview of it, and then what is Agentic AI, and the different agentic patterns that you could use when you develop Agentic AI applications, and what are the solution approaches that you could follow, and combining both the Agentic AI as well as the Marketplace SDK to build an Agentic Marketplace app. What are the options that you have, how you could build those apps, and then a demo and a live walkthrough of a code that I have created, and then what are the key takeaways, and you can ask any questions if you have. Okay, moving to the marketplace apps, first I'll cover the purpose of it. So we all, I believe most of us have would have come with from the XP background. So in XP, we could customize anything and everything that we see in Sitecore because everything is available as for customization within the pipeline or events or like there are multiple ways to customize how Sitecore works, our application works, and everything was end-to-end customizable. But when you develop anything in XM Cloud, the challenge is you cannot customize anything because it is a SaaS application. And this became like a lockdown kind of issue. Like, so once you have like all of the flexibilities, but then now you don't have any of the flexibility. So that's why Sitecore came up with this approach of this marketplace. So where you could even customize how things behave within the Sitecore. You cannot edit like certain things, which you don't have to. But then there are options where like there are elements within the XM Cloud or even the Cloud Portal which you could probably customize. That's what we'll be seeing in today's call as well. And when you try to do this, there are two different architectural styles which are available within the marketplace apps. The first one is the client side app. So if you wanted to build any simple application, for example, if you want to build an app within the XM Cloud, and from your app, like your app will always be rendered within an iframe. You won't get an option to render your app as part of like very integrated with XM Cloud. So you will only be able to deploy your app within an iframe. So which means like you cannot access like all of the outside elements within the parent window, which is available within the XM Cloud. You can only access whatever within the iframe where you will be able to develop. But then Sitecore has come up with a way to with a built-in authentication and a built-in mechanism to interact with the elements with the XM within XM Cloud, like which you can see on the page. For example, if you wanted to edit a component on the XM Cloud, you have an option to directly communicate without any authentication from your app itself. So which is what is client-side app. Like what happens is the browser acts as a proxy, and from your app, which you see on that panel, like on the screen, like what you see is it's a custom field app. Like from here, like you will be able to access whatever happens within the XM Cloud. You will not be able to control a lot of things, like you cannot refresh a page or something, but then you'll be able to access some of it. This is the client-side app. And when it comes to full stack, it's something like, for example, if you have any kind of long-running process which is happening behind the scenes, when you open the app, like if there is a background process that has to happen, and even if the browser tab closes, if it has to happen, so in that case, you will be building a full stack app, like where you wanted to have a client-side element and a server-side element in your Next.js, and which has to interact with any of the backend services that you have, or from your backend, if you wanted to make a call to the Sitecore API, then you will be building a full stack app. And in our today's demo, we'll be looking at only client-side app today, but then full stack app is also not very complex. And from authorization options, you have two. You can use the built-in authorization to interact with any of the XM Cloud elements, but then you have custom authorization option as well. So where you could create your own client credentials. And this is something which is useful when you have those long-running processes. So when you have a process which is happening behind the scenes, which has to happen like even if the browser tab closes or something. And if you wanted to interact with the Sitecore API, at that time, you could use the custom authorization option. And there are multiple extension points here. The first, so here, like there are two major categories. One is the standalone app or the XM Cloud app. If you wanted to like build anything for Cloud Portal, then you could use the standalone. And if you wanted to build anything within XM Cloud, you can use the XM Cloud. And within XM Cloud, you have four extension points. The first one is full screen. If you want the app to render in a complete full screen, then you could use the full screen. And if you want it to render within a context panel, which is what we'll be seeing in today's demo, like which is like something like which is next to the content tree structure that you see there. So that will be the context panel, which we'll be seeing today. But what you see on the screen is the custom field, which you see right there. And then the dashboard widget is something which you can render within the dashboard of the XM Cloud. Okay, so now moving on to the Agentic AI side. So most of us might be familiar with what is Agentic AI, but then I'll still quickly start with the background. So in 2022, we know ChatGPT came into picture, and we had ChatGPT, which was able to generate human-like text and images based on the prompts that we were able to give. And which is good for like creative tasks, generative tasks, like it can generate text, it can generate images and all of those. But then it was not very assistive because ChatGPT operates on its own, and we cannot ingest any of our data or any of our application there. And when it was released, it was trained only till 2020 or 2021 data, and it was not having any access to the live data as well. So it didn't have the live data access, and it didn't have our custom data access. So because of which we were not able to use ChatGPT for our work. And that's where in 2023 and 2024, a different architecture pattern evolved, which is retrieval augmented generation and function calling. With these two approaches, you can integrate ChatGPT LLMs, like behind the scenes, like ChatGPT is using GPT-4, GPT 3.5, right? So those GPT models, you could probably use the specific retrieval augmented generation approach to apply within your context. Along with Azure AI Search or any other tool, you could probably apply that with your context. Like you could have multiple SharePoint documents or multiple documentations which is related to your environment. You could ingest that into Azure AI Search, and then you could use retrieval augmented generation approach, which means instead of using the ChatGPT's own trained knowledge, you could you could find out, like based on the user's input or user's query, you could find out the top three documents from the Azure AI Search and add it to your prompt or context, and then you can send that to the GPT, and GPT was able to respond based on your context. And this is where like Copilot and all of these things came into picture. But still, like it was like more generative and assistive during this time. But then when during the time of 2024 and 2025, that's where this agentic patterns came into picture. This became possible because of the reasoning and actioning models which came into picture. So whatever GPT models that we were seeing at the till 2024 were only generative models. It was able to generate text, but then in 2024 and 2025 we had a lot of reasoning models which were coming into picture, like O3 Mini. Those series, you can see like they are good at reasoning. When I say reasoning, it's you, if you give any complex problem to that specific model, it was able to break down the complex problem into multiple smaller problems and find multiple solutions for each of the problems, find the best solution, and then respond back with the best answer. This is where like for these models, if you give those like complex questions or like, for example, IIT questions or those ones, it was able to answer more precisely than the GPT model, because GPT was good at generating. They were trying to do the generative task well, but then they were not trying to do the reasoning task well. And this is where these reasoning models were solving that gap. And then actioning models also came into picture, where right now, like you may be using the agent feature of ChatGPT, or previously it was deep research and those ones. So those features, like behind the scenes, there are models like which can open a browser and convert your actions which are in the prompt into the browser clicks and automate the actions that you may perform in your browser or in your computer. So those computer use and browser use models came into picture, which automated those tasks, which are the actioning models. So now we have the generative models, reasoning models, and actioning models. With these three models together, you could automate any of the business process that you have. Here is where like we have I have broken this down. For example, if you have like any specific task, like even we can take any simple task like responding to an email. So if your boss sends you an email, first you will probably understand like what's there in the email, which is perceived, and then you will analyze, you will think and come up with some kind of plan, and then you will decide like what kind of response you have to make, and then you will send a response to that email, right? So this is for a simple task. Like this is what happens in even in complex business process. We'll start with some kind of analysis, planning, decision, and then we will go and execute. So this is how all the business process structured. And for each of these steps, you see like perceive is something which we can do without AI. Like you could probably synthesize all of the information that you have, and analyze is where like you can use your reasoning models, and planning is where your reasoning models can also be used. And even for decision, you could use the reasoning models, and then for execution, you could use the generative models and a combination with the actioning models as well. So for each of these steps, like you can use either the generative or reasoning or actioning models, and you can automate the complete business process. So this is how all of this come into picture. And when I say this, like there is a caution, like when you build these agentic AI application, like you won't get the ROI for all the process that you would automate. Because some process may be very repetitive in your organization. You may be doing like 5 times or 10 times in a day. So for those cases, definitely you will be seeing the ROI. But if you're doing only once a day or something, or if it's not like time consuming, then you won't get the ROI if you still automate with AI, because AI is not there at like where it can understand everything. You have to still spend some time engineering it. And most of the times what you have seen is only 10% of the complete project relates to LLM, and 90% of it is more about engineering, architecture, design, and deployment, and all of those things. So you won't get the ROI if you're automating all of the tasks only for specific tasks, which is highly intensive and also highly repetitive across the organization. Okay. So we were speaking about like AI, agentic AI, but then agentic AI is a combination of all of these AI agents and putting that to an architecture and then deploying it to a specific environment in the way that we want, and preparing the data and multiple other things as well. So all of these together forms agentic AI, but the important component is AI agents. So when it comes to AI agents, it involves 4 elements. The first one is the LLM. And the second one is the instructions, like the instructions which you would give for the AI to behave. And this is where you have to be very careful as well. So when you work on these agentic AI projects, you'll see like you may be giving some kind of instructions. But if, for example, if you're building any kind of chat application, and if you're giving any kind of instructions that you shouldn't respond for this kind of question and all, people who are at the other end, like responding to a chat through the chat interface, they can kind of manipulate whatever instructions you have given, and they can do a prompt injection attack as well. So there are multiple things there. So you have to be like very careful about the security and carefully craft these instructions in such a way that like nobody can kind of cheat the model and do a prompt injection attack. And the next one is the knowledge base, where it could be an internal data where you have, it could be in SharePoint or Box or multiple other storages, or something from external web as well. For sometimes like certain cases, like if you wanted to do lead enrichment use case or those kind of use cases, where you may need to connect with the external data, pull in details from LinkedIn or some other sources as well. And then the next element is the actioning layer, where you have to perform an action. It could be like updating the CRM records through the APIs, or like sending emails through Outlook, or like SMTP, or triggering marketing action campaigns. Depending on the use case that you have, you may have a specific action associated with an LLM. So moving to the patterns, we have multiple patterns. I've captured only the common patterns that I've come across in real life, but then there are multiple other patterns like which are also there. The first one is the basic responder pattern. So this is the whatever we are discussing in this slide is single agent patterns. And the next slide we'll be discussing about multi-agent patterns as well. So for single agent patterns, you have a basic responder pattern, like which is the simplest form. Like when you give an input, the agent responds an output based on its trained knowledge. And then the second one is the retrieval augmented generation, which we already discussed. And then the third one is the memory augmented pattern, where the agent uses an external memory system to remember the past interactions which you have, or the context, and then it helps with the more personalized or context-aware responses, where you wanted to like ensure that you personalize based on like whatever interactions or whatever questions user has asked in the past. In those cases, you will be using this specific pattern. And the fourth one is the tool use pattern. Like some of us might have used this as well, combining this with external tools or APIs or databases. And then the fifth one is the planning pattern, where we give a problem to the agent, and the agent breaks down that into multiple tasks. And then the reflection pattern, like where in most of the cases when these agents generate a response, you want another agent coupled with another LLM to validate that the generated response is accurate. So that's where you will use this reflection pattern, which goes and validates based on the given business criteria. Like it acts as a QA agent basically, which goes and validates the generated response against the business criteria or the acceptance criteria that we would have developed. And then the last one is the React pattern. This pattern actually kind of combines the agent's thoughts as well as the actions. It's kind of, we also call it as chain of thought. It basically breaks down the task and it does the reasoning as well as the action together. The next one is the multi-agent pattern. So when I spoke about the business process, if you remember, there were multiple steps involved. And one thing which we have learned over the last 2 years, like developing these Agentic AI applications, is that if you give a large amount of goals, like maybe let's say like 3, 4 goals to a single LLM or a single agent, it won't perform really well. Because that's where the hallucination starts. So you have to break down that problem into multiple smaller problems or smaller goals. And for each goal, you have to create an agent. How much ever small you are able to break that problem in a smaller goal, it becomes easy for the agent to do it accurately. And this is the situation where the multi-agent patterns come into picture. So you will be taking a business problem, and for certain business problems, you will be developing 10 agents. And we have gone with like a custom, like very complex problems, where we had to build about 60 agents as well. So you have to find out like what is the number of agents, like what are the kind of agents, like after you break down the complex problem into smaller goals. And that's where this pattern comes into picture. The first one is the supervisor pattern, where you have a top level supervisor, which will be controlling all of the tasks, and then you'll be having multiple smaller agents working on it. Like supervisor agent becomes the parent for all of the incoming business process. That will be the agent which will be responding back. But then it can work with multiple sub agents as well. This is the pattern that we'll be seeing in today's demo. And the next one is the hierarchical pattern, where you have multiple layers, like multiple top level supervisor and a sub level supervisor, and then multiple other agents working behind the scenes. And next one is the competitive pattern, where if for a critical problem, like sometimes you may need like multiple agents work in parallel, go solve the problem, and then finally a decision maker agent which can find out like which has solved the problem right, and take that response back to the user. So this is something which is needed for like complex business process or complex chat experience, like where you wanted multi-level validations to happen. And then network pattern is also something which is common, where you depend, like one agent depends on other to complete a task, and it completes all of these in a horizontal pattern. And the next one is the handoff pattern, where you want one of the agent to hand over the task to the next one. Like this is also called as like A to A pattern. For example, if you have an application which is hosted in Sitecore, and sometimes you may have an application which is like an Agentic AI application which is also hosted in a different system. If you take an example of, let's say, HubSpot also has its own Agentic AI platform. And if you want certain tasks to be done in the context of Sitecore, and certain part of the process have to be done within the HubSpot, then the agent within the Sitecore has to hand off that task to the HubSpot agentic system, and HubSpot agentic system has to get the task, and it has to carry over forward from there. But then also it has to like send the statuses back to the Sitecore. So that's where the handoff pattern comes into picture, which is also called A to A protocol as well. And most of the times we have seen this agentic RAG to work as well. This is something which we will be using if you have, let's say, hundreds of thousands of documents. And if you want, this is one example. So where you have a lot of documents, and if a user asks any specific question, then you need a planner agent to understand the user's question, break that down into multiple tasks. And for each of the tasks, we need that to work with individual agents and aggregate the response and send it back to the user. And one of the agent might be doing a RAG action as well, searching across multiple documents and coming back. So combining RAG as well as this agentic architecture together will help us to succeed in these kind of applications where you have like large amount of data for which the chat experience has to respond well. So yeah, these are the different kind of patterns that we have come across. And then the next thing is about how to build these agentic apps. The first option that you have is going with a platform. So we know Sitecore has partnered with Gradial. Gradial is an agentic orchestration platform where you can go build multiple agents, connect those with different systems, like, for example, Jira, or any of the systems to take action. And similarly, you have like other platforms like Glean or Writer. So there are multiple other agentic orchestration platforms in which you could go and build an agent and then orchestrate them in a flow in a visual orchestration, and you can deploy it in multiple environments as well. So this is one way. The next way is Sitecore Agentic Studio, which was released recently, where you could probably build a standalone app or a marketplace integrated app as well. But then to build a marketplace integrated app, there isn't any connection so far, like with like from the marketplace app. If you have to trigger an API to call the agents and flows in the Agentic Studio, but that API is not yet released. But then it will soon be released. Like once it is released, like you'll be able to build the apps within Sitecore Agentic Studio and connect them with the marketplace app. But today you cannot. And then the next option is build your own. So this is the example that we will be seeing today, where you could use the Microsoft Agent Framework, which is the newer framework released by Microsoft, or the older framework like Semantic Kernel, or something other than the Microsoft portfolio, which is LangChain, or there are multiple other frameworks, Crew AI and all available. You could probably build within those frameworks and then deploy it to your marketplace app. You can wire up your marketplace app with that agentic app and deploy it together. So these are the practical steps if you wanted to build an agentic app. The first one is you have to design the agent flow. You have to look at the business process. You have to look at what are steps are involved, break that down into multiple goals, and then assign those agents and find out like what tools and memory you have to put in place. And then you have to build the marketplace app and handle the authentication, which is important. You have to go with either built-in authentication or custom authentication, and then identify the right platform, framework, and pattern for the agentic app. So if you have to like you go with Gradial or you have to build your own, depending on those pros and cons, you have to decide what is the right platform or framework, and build the agentic app in your compatible language. Most of the times I've seen Python to work well because the background of agentic AI comes from machine learning and all of these patterns, and all of those sector was primarily using Python as a language, and that's why I've seen the AI to understand Python much better than any other language. So I recommend Python, but if you're not comfortable, you have the agent framework supports C# as well, but it doesn't support TypeScript or any of the other languages. So you can go with Python or C#, whichever you're comfortable with. And you have to ensure security, performance, and instrumentation as well. If anything goes wrong, you should be able to track all of these, and then host the marketplace app and agentic apps separately as much as possible. You can also deploy it together, but then I recommend to keep it in a decoupled way because agentic app usually gets more load than the marketplace app. So when you deploy these together, like you have to make sure like there's more horsepower for the agentic app compared to the marketplace app. Yeah, this is a sample architecture and a sample example that we'll be seeing in today's call, which is the agentic compliance insights. This is something which you might have seen and your customers might also be going through. Like when they generate a content, they have to validate this with AI today. But then previously they would have been like going through a process of like Excel checklist, looking at what all uh, things were mentioned in the Excel checklist, and they have to make sure it complies with all of the regulations. And a lot of customers, they have some regulations like certain client names shouldn't be mentioned in the specific content. There are multiple other checklist related stuff, and also there are multiple other elements like bias and like from a SEO perspective, we have to validate if the content is unique, original content, those ones. So for all of these, if you look at it, like these are multiple separate goals. We have to validate against a checklist, that is one goal. We have to validate for SEO, that is another goal. And looking at all of these, you have to break this down into multiple tasks, and that's what I've done in this example. You can see the validators agents there. These are like set of agents. I've created about like 7-8 agents, and the supervisor agent which initiates all of these agents in parallel, gets the feedback and aggregates. And then an optimizer agent, which is basically a fix agent you can suggest as like the optimizer agent looking at all of the feedback from the validators. The optimizer has to come up with what is the recommended fix, and then it has to be pushed back to the marketplace, and customer content author can apply that fixes or edit and move forward from there. Okay, so I'm sure like there were a lot of theory. So once you see the demo, you should be able to understand what we are speaking, and then you'll be able to connect the dots. So I'll start with the apps. Like here is where you have to go to the App Studio if you wanted to create an app, and then you can click on create an app to create the app. Right now, you cannot do a public app, and you will be able to create only a private app within your instance. The public app creation is available for early access. For some partners, they have released for early access. And if you need, you can follow up with Sitecore, but then it should be available pretty soon for GA soon. So when you try to create an app, you will be seeing all of these options. It can be standalone or within XM Cloud. You can select whichever option you want. And in this case, I've selected the page context panel. And then you can select whichever Sitecore APIs you need access to. I've selected the XM Cloud API specifically because I wanted to edit the content, pull the content, and I also wanted to edit the content. And then you have deployment URL. So here is where like I've put in our local URL. I've deployed my application to localhost 3000. And then I've selected an app logo URL. And these app IDs. These app IDs will be helpful if you wanted to build a custom field. And if you wanted to say like which app has to open when a custom field is selected, that's when you will need these app IDs. But in our use case, we are not using this app ID. And then the client credential is for the custom authentication. And let me go to the code. So this is the code that I have developed. I've created two separate applications. Let me open this in Cursor. So the Agentic app and the Marketplace app. So I'll first cover the Marketplace app. This is built on Next.js, and it follows the Next.js starter kit. Sitecore has released a starter kit in Next.js for Marketplace SDK, which you can see online. And I've used that as a base, and I've built on top of it. So here I have these layout. The layout covers like what the title, description, those ones. And if you look at the page, this is the primary page where like whatever you see on the app, within the app, like those ones will come under this. Like once you see the app, like you'll be able to relate these two things together. It includes all of these actions and those ones. And the providers have followed the Chakra UI pattern, which comes with Sitecore. And then so I've also created a couple of components, like once the audit is completed by the compliance insights agents. So whatever you see there will be from this one. And then the recommended fixes. So this is another component. These two components also I'll show you in the UI. And then we have, I've created some libs, like certain configs, and then I have this marketplace client. So this is from Sitecore as well. So here is where like you will be able to see the built-in authentication, how it sends those data, like all of these things. So this is directly from the starter kit. Okay, so now moving on to the Agentic app. So in case of Agentic app, you can see the list of agents here. For the compliance, as I told, we need the checklist agent, citation, validation, fact checking, all of these. So I've created multiple agents and a base class for those ones as well. Then you can look at an agent here. So these agents, like it will have the set of instructions that I mentioned and what specific model it has to connect to, then how it has to perform the evaluation. And there are some kind of manipulations we have to do once the agent responds back with JSON as well. So those ones are covered here. So each of these agents, and then there is a fix agent, which basically goes and recommends the fixes. And once we click on apply fixes, it also goes and calls the XM Cloud API to make the fix. And yeah, this is the Excel sheet. Yeah, I'll open that. Yeah, here. Then yeah, this is the supervisor agent, which becomes the parent as well. So what I've done is I've also launched these two. Like I've given all of these instructions here. Like if you want to productionize these, what are the steps that you have to perform? All of these are there. And then here you can see the project structure, and then these URLs and how you can set up, install those NPM packages, and how you could start all of these. So right now I've started these apps. Like this is the localhost 3000. So when you run these apps, like these apps are dependent on the XM Cloud context. So when you run these individually, it won't work. You'll see an error because it requires the context depending on the code that I have written. It needs a context and it's not there. So that's why it's spinning. I have to add like a little more good error handling system saying that like you don't have the context. So that's why it's not working, but I haven't added it yet. So here you have the compliance insights API, which is I've got these three APIs. And these two are just for like validations, and the post one is the major one. So this is the backend application that you can think of, which is the agentic app, which you saw there. So the marketplace app will call this agentic AI app. So here, if I go to the specific page, and if you'll be able to see these apps here, and here you could see, let me speech. Yeah, once you open this one here, you'll be able to see the page info. So this, it says like this is the page name and all. And also here is where you can see these audit report. Like I mentioned about multiple other agents, right? The checklist agent looks at the list of checklists. I think I have about like 7 or 8 in an Excel sheet, which I have included it. And also the fact agent will basically go and check the facts, like whatever we have mentioned here. So let's say like we have said like 90% of the global electricity is from renewable energy. So that's what it goes and validates. And citation, here we have an URL. It basically goes and validates the citation. And this specific agent validates if there is any biased content in this specific thing, which doesn't work for all audience. And the PI agent validates if there is any PI information in this specific content. And the plagiarism agent makes sure the content is unique, and the phrases that we see here, the unique phrases that we see here, are not copied from elsewhere. Because if it is copied from elsewhere, it would impact your SEO and GUO or AEO, like all of those specific search engine techniques. Like all of these will get impacted if you are copying anything from any of the other websites. So that's what this agent makes sure. And all of these agents work together, work in parallel, and you have the supervisor agent, which basically initiates all of these agents together and aggregates all of the response back to the front end. Okay. It takes about, I think, a minute or two to respond, because all of these, like we are making a call to the OpenAI, and yeah, now the response has been completed. Here you can see like it says like certain claims are not right. Like, so this is all based on like whatever checklist parameters I have mentioned there. So it just goes and compares the content and then comes back with the responses. And here it says the factual error, that is, so it says only 32% of the global electricity is from renewables. So while we have said 90%, and then a citation is also wrong. So it says the citation is incorrect. And then for PII, it says you're using a specific person's email ID, but instead it has to be something like marketing@company.com or something, right? So these are something like, while looking at it, like it looks, all of these are like correct and impressive. But then when all of these agents goes and validates these, like you see, like there are a lot of errors here. So this is where these complaints and all of these come into picture. And this is a challenge for like almost all of the clients, like to validate the content and approve it. So these are the recommended fixes, like it comes with. So here you could probably see like we use the word families, so that's why it is recommending community, because because there are people like who are not married yet as well. So that's why. So yeah, these are the recommendations, and what I can do is I can click on apply fixes, and it says fixes applied successfully. And this is where the other issue comes. Like you don't see the change here because all of this is rendered within an iframe, and we don't have a way to communicate to the parent or reload the page or those ones, right? So that's why I've added a disclaimer that you have to reload the page. So once you reload the page, you'll be able to see this. See the stuff like whatever was recommended, it was just updated here. And if we want to make any further edits, we can edit and approve. So that's what it is. And maybe right now we could probably pause for any questions that you guys may have. I know it has been like a lot of content and maybe a bit overwhelming, but do you guys have any specific questions? And here I've included all the repositories. So this is the repository where I've hosted all the code. And this is the Marketplace SDK. So this is a really good starter kit. I've used it and it was perfect. It was very thin, very intuitive, and you could start your Marketplace app with it. And there is a Marketplace documentation as well. So there is a developer documentation and a business documentation as well. You could probably see from here. So any questions so far? hope this all makes sense. Like if you guys want me to kind of cover anything in detail, I'll be happy to cover as well.
Any questions? Or if you're not able to speak, you can type in the chat box as well. So if you have any questions, you can ask.
And maybe after this call, like please do try the GitHub repository and then let me know how it goes. It involves the OpenAI key as well. You may need to get an OpenAI key to work on this. And one thing which I didn't mention in the call, like which is some of these agents are are using its trained knowledge. Some of the reasoning models, whatever it has been used in this specific code, it uses the trained knowledge, and the fact and the citation uses a web search, and even the plagiarism, like it also uses a web search. So there are web search models within OpenAI. You can probably look into that. Like there are, I think, two or three web search models available within OpenAI. I've used one of it, which basically not only uses the trained knowledge, but the model itself goes and do the web search for you and then comes back. It was a unique model, so that does the fact checking and citation and all of these for us.
Okay. It seems very interesting to try out all these things, and I think it's a very good, interesting and wonderful session because it's our latest topics and we need to adopt the agentic AI as well. So I think it's really great. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
If
thank you
no
so much,
questions,
Subram.
then we are good to go. Okay, bye everybody. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.